Hello everyone, welcome back to the TrueCast. Today I wanted to talk about Tulpas, which is something that really scared me. Well, they used to scare me more, but I researched a bit, so now I'm a little less afraid. But the concept, I feel like it could still be scary. And without losing any extra time, by now you're probably wondering, okay, what even is a Tulpa? Because probably most of you don't even know what it is. Basically, I'll give you this definition I found. A tulpa is a mental construct which is an autonomous sentient entity, or in other words, a being that lives in your subconscious. I just added this other bit. But yeah, basically, think of an imaginary friend. Kids have imaginary friends. It's normal for them, and they're sort of in their brain, right? But the difference is that an imaginary friend is completely, like, it's got nothing that is real about them. Even the kid, when he's talking to his imaginary friend, they're just playing, basically. They'll imagine the friend responded something. They can ask the friend, what's your favorite flavor of chocolate? And then they would imagine the imaginary friend to say, oh, my favorite flavor is mint chocolate. That's a good flavor. To which then the kid will go, oh, I like it, but my favorite one is chocolate, and so on, and keep going with the conversation. But this is all a game, because the kid is making the replies up. They're imagining them, but they're not actually hearing another voice in their mind, another person in their mind telling them the things. At the end of the day, it's more like a puppet. The kid is making it say stuff. A tulpa doesn't work like that. A tulpa is much more developed. A tulpa, like I said, is similar to an imaginary friend, but you don't make it say stuff like that. The tulpa will say stuff on its own accord. The tulpa has a sense of self, it's got feelings, emotions, opinions. So, for all intents and purposes, they're basically an actual person that lives inside your mind, inside your subconscious. And now you might be thinking, okay, is this similar then to people with split personalities or multiple personalities? I think the medical term, by the way, is dissociative identity disorder, or something like that. But I guess it sort of is. But I think the main difference in this case is that this disorder causes these sort of other personalities, which we call them personalities, but they're actually, I think, and I'm not an expert, I'm not a psychologist, but the way I've seen it, the way I've seen people like this on the internet as well, it seems like they are literally like actual people inside their mind. So it just feels like they're not real outside of their mind, but they are real inside their mind. And they usually get created because of trauma, right? And here's the difference. Tulpas are created on purpose by the user. You yourself will need to create it. It will be extremely rare, very rare, to get a tulpa in your subconscious completely by mistake or accidentally or like that, because you will need to talk to it, interact with it on the daily. That is literally the biggest important factor to creating one. And in fact, I think, pretty sure, unless your tulpa is like extremely well developed, it will slowly disappear if you don't interact with it, because your brain is like forgetting it. So now you're probably thinking, okay, Dr. True, okay, but how do I create one if I wanted to? And by the way, I don't recommend it. I'll keep talking about it in a moment. I'll tell you why I don't recommend it, but first I'll tell you supposedly how you create one. Okay, so talking, interacting with it is a big thing. But they say there's multiple techniques. I've been browsing websites as well, just trying to understand it better, to do some research about it. But they say visualizing it in your mind is also an important part. It's gonna help a lot creating one. So you won't just get it randomly like that. Again, you also need most likely to visualize it. So that means think about what they look like, how they act, their behavior, personality, what they like, what they dislike, if they're happy or sad or whatever. And those are examples of visualizing it. And you have to do this constantly, and you have to basically force your mind to do it. And that's also why they call it forcing in the community. So you'd have to think about it a lot. You have to do it most likely daily. I will say you gotta do it daily. You have to do it, I don't know, at least half an hour every day, maybe more. You need to basically clear your mind as well, because otherwise, how are you gonna focus on it? You gotta focus as much as possible. And supposedly this helps a lot, but it's not necessary, like 100% necessary, because some people always also say that they don't really do this stuff because they want the tulpa to develop naturally and sort of see how it turns out and, not impress. Because you could just do all of this to try and create a tulpa in a specific way. And in fact, you can even base them on characters from shows, video games, anime, whatever you like. You can create a Donald Duck tulpa, I guess. That's the first example that came to mind. So we clarified, how to make them, and the fact that they require a lot of attention. You gotta interact with it constantly, otherwise it's just not gonna develop. Or it might even fade away if you don't. Well, in any case, we're still talking about something that is created by your own brain. So you also gotta realize that everyone's brain is different, right? Now, at this point, I should also explain why would you even want to do tulpas, right? I think for the most part, it can be kind of obvious. Now, historically, supposedly this practice comes from Tibetan monks, and they will make tulpas for a variety of reasons too, but mostly it was to face fears. They would imagine maybe a spirit animal guiding them, or another monk, right? A monk that didn't have that specific fear. Let's say Billy the monk, was afraid of spiders, for example. So then he would imagine Jackson, a older monk than him. He's older, he's wiser, maybe he's buffer, more attractive to whatever, but he's not afraid of spiders. And he will create this tulpa of this character, and the character will go like, see, that's not dangerous, you can face your fear of spiders, and he will create this tulpa to help himself face the fear of spiders. And keep in mind, we're talking about monks. It's monasticism. These people spend days and days meditating. Okay, so they probably have a certain mastery of their own mind, some level of, self-awareness of their subconscious and stuff that is much, much higher than most people. Meditation is a good thing. It's healthy. But, they worked on their minds probably a lot. They have a lot of control over their own mind. And so for them, it would be probably a lot easier creating tulpas. And that's probably why they created them as well. But obviously, in modern times, most of us, don't live up in the mountains meditating every day. So why do modern people create them? Like I was saying, should be kinda obvious. It's usually because of loneliness. They just imagine having a best friend in their mind. Some people even imagine having a partner, a special someone in their own mind. In fact, I was even browsing Reddit for, stories about tulpas, information to help me understand better as well. And I was browsing it, And I even found people that are married to their tulpas. Many people have like multiple tulpas as well, but we'll talk about this in a moment. For now, I wanted to go first into why the concept of tulpas made me scared in the first place. Because I did read a story. Well, it's more like a thread. It was a thread on 4chan. Now, I haven't read the original, especially because the thread was all the way back in 2012. Okay, and I only discovered this story like sort of recently, more like last year, maybe just, I don't know, 8 months ago or something. Must have seen it on another channel, but it kinda stuck with me. And now I thought about it again, and I was like, you know what? I want to talk about this on the podcast. Because I still find it scary. Basically, in 2012, you know, My Little Pony was very popular back then. It was like a huge thing. And everyone started going crazy over it, as they do when something becomes extremely mainstream. But you guys really don't understand. Unless you've been on the internet in that time period, you really do not understand how huge that thing was. How many people with My Little Pony pictures were everywhere. How many bronies. And apparently, you know, they had a board on 4chan that was for My Little Pony. And sometimes people would discuss tulpas there. They'll create threads about tulpas. So apparently, creating tulpas was a bit more common in the My Little Pony community than it was in other ones. And you can already imagine, the guys were trying to make tulpas of ponies. Whatever. I guess you do you, right? I said you can make it of any character, and to be fair, it can be anything. I'm assuming you can even make tulpas of objects. Of course, that'd be sentient. Tulpas are sentient, so then, I don't know, you'd have a tulpa of a talking fridge or whatever. That's kind of funny. But yeah, going back to the main thing. There was this post on the, I'm pretty sure it was the My Little Pony board slash MLP, and this guy was basically discussing how he'd been trying to create a tulpa for a few nights. He spent like 60 hours on it. I don't know, the timing seemed a bit inconsistent, but let's go with 60 hours. So I spent 60 hours on creating it, and it was a Pinkie Pie tulpa, which, if you guys don't know, is the pink pony. I mean, it's got Pinkie in the name as well, so I guess that was easy to infer. Is that what you say, infer? You know, to understand, easy to predict. Yeah, Pinkie Pie has this sort of personality where she's hyper all the time and she's about partying and stuff. And so he created this tulpa, but it came out very wrong. Basically, he described the tulpa as not having any pupils, like the eyes were empty. The face was like all smudged and melting and weird. I'm assuming just like because he described the tulpa in different ways. Every now and then we'll change the description a bit. So I'm assuming it was changing quite kinda often. But overall, the face was fucked. Okay, this tulpa had that weird fucked face. Probably I'm gonna put something similar in the thumbnail of this video. So if you've seen the thumbnail, you know what I'm referring to. And face was melting and stuff. And no pupils, no eyes. It was deaf, apparently. And the biggest thing, it would scream 24/7. So you can imagine this guy had a pink pony in his brain screaming 24/7, especially when he was talking to other people, which I'm assuming this also brought him to isolate himself from people, which is obviously extremely bad, especially in these situations. And he started panicking and stuff, didn't know what to do. Now, the response on the thread was sort of mixed. Some people believed him, and they thought it was the scariest thread ever. And again, I didn't read all the thread. I just found some sort of summary of it with the, I guess most important moments. A lot of people thought it was real and they were scared. A lot of people thought it was fake, and they were even joking about it. Like, one of the funniest responses he got, for example, a few people told him to make a Jackie Chan tulpa to get rid of the Pinkie Pie tulpa. Like, okay, you got this fucked up tulpa in your mind, you messed it up. Oh, and by the way, the guy did say that he will think about the tulpa, the process of creating the tulpa, before going to sleep, which is apparently is something you should never do, because then your dreams might influence the creation of the tulpa. And that obviously can be pretty bad, because you don't know what dreams you're gonna get. Some people have nightmares all the time, right? And anyway, yeah, the Jackie Chan tulpa. And then the same guy that suggested Jackie Chan tulpa was like, okay, and then when you have a problem with the Jackie Chan tulpa, you gotta make a Chuck Norris tulpa. Because, I mean, it was 2012. Okay, Chuck Norris was a meme back then. People joked about him all the time. And then, obviously, yeah, the Chuck Norris tulpa could also go wrong. Okay, how do you fix that? That's easy. Duh. Just make a Bruce Lee tulpa. That was obvious, right? And when the Bruce Lee tulpa goes bad too, then you're basically fucked. Basically. Some people suggested some pretty dark stuff. Which I'm not gonna explicitly say. I'm just gonna say it's a word that starts with S and ends with E, so I think you know which word it is. People suggested the most genuine suggestions were, first of all, people that tried to tell him to sort of fix the tulpa. Try imagining organs for your tulpa, it might be malformed, so try imagining a heart, lungs, liver, try imagining all the biology of the tulpa, because maybe it's missing parts and it's suffering because of that. Try imagining functioning ears for your tulpa, so she can hear you, because she was deaf, she can hear you and you can tell her to stop screaming. Or try to establish a non-verbal link with your tulpa. Because, I mean, remember, these tulpas are in your subconscious. So surely you should be able to communicate with them using your thoughts, right? Just by, like, heavily visualizing, I guess. I don't know, again, I'm not an expert, but it makes sense to me. Try to make a sort of a psychic connection to the tulpa. The OP that posted the whole thing about him making a tulpa by making this fucked up tulpa, eventually started giving updates saying that the tulpa was getting worse. Now she was only screaming in like very quick intervals, like fractions of seconds of scream, high pitched and stuff, and it was driving him insane. He was not sleeping because every time he tried to sleep, the tulpa would like scream louder. Every time he tried to, force traits into the tulpa, trying to fix it using his mind, making everything that they suggested, the tulpa will start screaming louder, and then he will start getting ringing in his ears and maybe a headache, and it was hard to focus, which makes sense because you got this thing constantly screaming. That's a nightmare. And eventually people just started suggesting, okay, try to kill the tulpa instead. Try to destroy it. Try to dissolve it. Imagine taking it apart limb by limb. And that obviously wasn't gonna work either, because this guy cannot focus right now. And he was panicking a lot. In fact, a few people even told him, OP, you are panicking right now. This panicking, this fear, is gonna feed it even more. It's gonna make it even worse. Your tulpa is gonna act even worse because it's gonna be fed by your fear and stuff. Not to mention that panic brings other panic in general, guys. I know it's hard, but you gotta find ways to calm yourself down. You gotta distract yourself, maybe, that's an option. And that's what they suggested to him, but he could not distract himself. Also, my god, they suggested to listen to loud music, maybe. And the guy, you wanna know what the guy does? He was watching more My Little Pony. But come on, you have a fucking pink pony demon in your head screaming all the time, and you're gonna watch more My Little Pony where the exact Pinkie Pie character you have in your head that is screaming at you, she's exactly there. Okay, granted, she's not acting like a lunatic like that, but she's there. How are you gonna get distracted? How are you gonna forget you have this thing in your head, right? People suggested him to try to do mantras, like, I don't remember one they told, but the one that's pretty simple, we all know, was going like you know, rhythmically like that, to try to change focus. Meditation, they really suggested everything, but guys, there was no fixing this, because again, it was screaming all the time, and he started having like bad hallucinations as well. Apparently, he started feeling like the pony was touching him, like on the arm. He will feel something touching his arm, and maybe like literally while, let's say, the arm was on the wall, arm attached to the wall, still feeling like something is poking you. He said he will see her when his eyes were closed, or with what's it called? The end? Oh, peripheral vision. Yeah, he will see her on the peripheral vision. So I think you can see how reading these sort of things can scare anyone. Or in my case, I listen to people, you know, tell the story. And well, eventually he's just disappeared. Just stopped replying and never came back. And we don't know what truly happened. Who knows? To some of you, it's pretty obvious what might have happened. And again, I'm not gonna say it explicitly because YouTube hates it, but it's that word there that starts with the S and ends with the E. Who knows? See, I think there's always still a chance that he simply just stopped replying. He simply managed to find help, called an ambulance or whatever, which, by the way, people were suggesting. He managed to call an ambulance, find some help, managed to relax, maybe got a psychologist or a therapist to help him. Because I'm not saying the guy was crazy, but once you got this tulpa in your mind that keeps screaming, and you have a hard time getting rid of it, then you need at the very least some therapy to learn how to cope with it, right? You know, the therapy itself might help him even get rid of the tulpa, maybe. Like, just by relaxing, might help him relax. Maybe he needs some sort of medication that relaxes him. And by the way, here's where one detail comes out as well. Because before he left the thread, he basically said that he was taking medication for his depression and anxiety. And I think this is one of the reasons why it went so wrong. So, you're trying to create a tulpa, but you got problems in your daily life with anxiety and depression, and you're using your brain to create this, okay? And you're gonna create it in your subconscious. Now, I'm not like an expert on this stuff because I never created a tulpa myself, and honestly, after hearing this story, I don't wanna create a tulpa myself. That just seems dangerous, because I guess things can just go wrong. But this guy has anxiety and depression, and obviously these are gonna influence your tulpa. My god, yes, of course they are. Because it's in your subconscious, my guy. So it is gonna influence you. And then, to fix this, to help your anxiety and depression, you gotta take medication. And the medication is gonna change your whole brain chemistry. And then you're gonna make this tulpa with problems and an altered brain chemistry. This is like very, very bad, very stupid, you know? And other people told him to, but what you wanna do? At that point it was too late. So going back to the possible ending, yeah, maybe the guy did somehow manage to find some help and did get okay. Some people say, I remember reading this, a post from a guy that said, oh, I know this guy, yeah, I remember when this happened, he's fine, he managed to find help. But then again, it's the internet, how are you gonna convalidate the things? You know, how do you know for sure that this is true? It's hard, you know? It's very hard to prove stuff on the internet. And adding to my theory that still, you know, there's still a chance it might have been okay. Adding to this theory, 4chan is like pretty anonymous with stuff. Everyone there posts as an anonymous person. Pretty sure you can put like a username, but at least 95% of the website goes by anonymous, because you can post without having an account even. You can just post anonymously like that. And the OP himself was an anonymous user. So even if he did come back, how would we know it was him, right? It would be impossible. Like, the only way will be if he keeps coming back day after day on the same thread. Then yeah, sure, we can recognize the style of writing, we can recognize it's him. I think there's a signature as well. So, but the signature is unique to the forum. See, that's the thing, to the thread. So if he came back the day after, then sure, we will be able to recognize that it's him. But let's say he takes a mental health break to work on this and gets better, but even just a week passes. Let's be a bit more generous, okay? Maybe even just 3 weeks pass. How are we gonna be able to tell? He's gonna have to post on a new thread, because that one is probably like buried under many threads and posts by now. If not locked, meaning you can't really add anything else anymore. So how are we gonna be able to tell? He's gonna make a new one and be like, oh, that's me, by the way. Remember 3 weeks ago? The Pinkie Pie Tulpa? Okay, that was me posting this. I'm fine. How? How are we gonna know that it's him, you know? It's still gonna be an anonymous user, and people are obviously gonna be like, that's bullshit, it's not you. And besides, like I said, people were already not believing in this story. Now, if you want my opinion, I think maybe something like this could have happened. But I still think overall the story is a lie. I think it's just a simple creepypasta in thread format. And the user, the OP, was just trying to write a scary story. That's my opinion anyway. If you wanna know why, well, because from what I've researched, here's the biggest red flag to me. From what I've researched, yeah, Tulpas might come out wrong, that's a possibility, but they are still contained inside your mind. But this guy was making it seem like, well, first of all, he was saying he was feeling touched, he was feeling the Tulpa touching him. Then he was saying, I mean, he never explicitly said that he heard the Tulpa with his ears. But he did say, like, he'd see the Tulpa with, like, peripheral vision, and he'd have hallucinations, and he was hallucinating pretty bad. Now, the hallucinations, okay, fair, might be due to pre-existing conditions. There's always a chance he has conditions and doesn't even know. That's a chance. Could be schizophrenia, for example. I don't think it always causes hallucinations like that. Sometimes they're only auditory, sometimes, you know, like things you see, I guess. But yeah, sure, it could have been that he had schizophrenia. People can have a genetic predisposition to getting it. And it can be triggered by extreme stress. At least from what I know. Again, I'm not an expert, I'm not a psychologist. I know it says doctor in my name, but I'm not a psychologist. I'm a doctor in video games. I got a PhD in video games. So I don't know about this stuff. But yeah, sure, there's probably a chance. It's probably a chance the guy was predisposed to having schizophrenia, and because of all the panicking And this thing screaming in his mind, he started getting schizophrenia and started seeing this creature in real life. That's a chance. But normally, all I'm saying is that normally, you don't see tulpas with your eyes. You don't hear them with your ears, and you don't feel them with your skin. And you don't smell them with your nose, and you don't taste them with your mouth. Don't eat your tulpa, probably. It's bad, I don't know. But, unless it's a cake tulpa. That is still killing it, I don't know. But, that's whatever. That's just kind of a joke I was making. But the point is, you don't feel tulpas with your senses like that. Tulpas are only in your mind, only in your subconscious. You only see them by imagining them. And yes, they're sentient, so they can talk to you without you speaking to them. You know, they can just, I don't know, pop in to say something, comment on something, but you're not gonna hear the comment as if someone is speaking to you. You're just gonna feel like you're thinking something, but it's not something you're thinking on purpose, okay? It's gonna feel, I guess, like when you saw a scary horror movie and you keep thinking about the monster, it keeps coming back to your mind. Just comes back naturally like that. The tulpa will kinda communicate in a similar way. When you hear it speak, you will just hear it as if you just randomly had that thought. But you will still be able to recognize it as a tulpa. I'm assuming, this is all theory for me anyway. Again, I don't have a tulpa. Not a tulpamancer. That's their dictionary. But another red flag is that the guy mentioned a few times spending certain amounts of hours on certain aspects. He was like, oh, I spent 20 hours visualizing her personality, so that's weird that she ended up a screaming mess. I spent 20 hours imagining each limb. And so he describes this many hours spent on everything. Okay, yeah, sure, could be. But I have a hard time believing you can create a tulpa this easily. I just don't think it's something you create in even just 60 hours. Because maybe I'm wrong, and maybe again it depends on someone else's mind, but in my head I'm thinking you will probably need at the very least 2 or 3 months to develop a tulpa, and constant thinking about it. If we gotta give it a total, that's gotta be at least 200 hours. And by the way, tulpas don't just pop into existence just like that, you know? They develop slowly, to the point that some people say they don't impose personalities on them because they want to see how they develop. Because they keep developing, and even your impressions, the thoughts you put into it, they're not always gonna stay with the tulpa. The tulpa might get a different personality at the end. That is to say, they develop slowly and gradually. They're not just gonna appear out of nowhere. Yeah, maybe one day you keep interacting with it, and then one day you realize all of a sudden your tulpa is responding to you without you having to make it up. But it won't be consistent. Even the visualization of the tulpa will not be consistent. Sometimes you'll see them on one way, some other times you'll think of them differently, and so like even what they look like is not gonna be set in stone from the beginning because it needs a lot of visualization. And people literally even say that they struggle to get their tulpas to talk. They'll have the tulpas, you know, like interact with them, do stuff autonomously, like being sentient and stuff, but not be able to talk, not being vocal. Or I guess like they won't have a specific voice or something. I don't know, this is still weird to me. But the way people describe it even on the forums, it seems like it just takes a lot of time. So you're not gonna wake up one day with a random screaming tulpa like that. It takes a lot more time than that, and it will be gradual. And you will see during the process, you will notice that something is going wrong. Okay, you will notice supposedly. And then there's also, I guess to be fair, you could counter this by telling me that the guy was creating the tulpa in his sleep probably. That's true. That might be. But the whole thing still kinda seemed a bit fake to me overall. So yeah, I think the story's fake. I think it's just a creepypasta. But that doesn't really change how I feel about Tulpas being scary, if I have to be honest. Cause I don't know, I just can't imagine, I wouldn't risk it. What if it goes wrong and I got some scary stuff in my head? And with that being said, that isn't even the only thing. Creating a tulpa, when you create a tulpa, you're gonna share the same subconscious, okay? So you're creating this person that, because they share your subconscious, they share part of your brain. And you're basically sort of fragmenting your brain this way. The more tulpas you create, the less and less you will own your brain, the less and less you'd be the main person in your brain. The way I seem to understand it, okay, I'm like a typical person, right? Dr. True is a typical person. And I can tell you that inside my brain, inside my subconscious, there is only one person, and it's the one talking right now. It's Dr. True. And that's it. There's no one else in my mind. You can call it a person in my mind, you can say Dr. True, the Dr. True in my brain, you can say it's a person, you can say it's a personality, but whatever you call him, he's still only one. It's only that guy inside my brain, and that guy is me talking right now. That's it. I'm a single person. My mind is composed of a single person. I'm not like some people that have, again, multiple people in their mind and they literally refer to themselves as systems. But when you create tulpas, you are going that direction. And that's what scares me too. When you create tulpas, because you share your subconscious with them, sure, they have different personalities, they might have different ways of understanding stuff. So they might even give you different points of views and help you understanding new things in the world, maybe even. They can help you grow metaphysically and whatever, but you're still gonna share your mind with them. That is still gonna create more people inside your mind. All of a sudden, let's say Jason creates a tulpa, and the tulpa's name is I don't fucking know, Queen Elizabeth, whatever. He creates a tulpa of the late queen. Well, then that body is not gonna have only Jason anymore. Now that body is gonna be Jason and Queen Elizabeth. See my point? You're putting more people in that brain. Now you're basically becoming like those people with multiple personalities. They're made of multiple people on the inside. I know this is not necessarily, like, I don't want to be offensive to them. I'm not saying this is like an evil thing, this is bad and stuff, but I think for most people, most of us understand that this is gonna fucking complicate your life. This is gonna make your life harder. I'm sorry, I'm pretty sure it will make your life harder. You will have internal conflict and stuff. What if you even fight? What if you fight with your tulpas? Did you think about that? What if you fight? And maybe it's not gonna happen. But again, the tulpas' personalities, you try to shape them, but they can change over time. And they might not adapt to what you shape them to be. If you have, fights in your own mind, do you realize that guy, that whoever person is inside your head, is gonna be there inside your head? Like that, That scares me as well. That's another thing that scares me about tulpas. And you're probably thinking, okay, Dr. Two, you're speaking as if tulpas are real. Well, here's the thing. I do believe they're real. Because we're not talking about ghosts or demons or cryptids even. Those are all fascinating things, don't get me wrong. I'm very fascinated by those. But at the end of the day, I'm a lot more skeptical about those. I'm gonna need some very good proof that those things exist, And it's a lot easier to disprove their existence too. Tulpas, on the other hand, to me, it's very likely that they're real. Of course, they're not real in real life, you know? Like, if someone has a tulpa, that tulpa is not real to me, like, in the classic sense. But that tulpa does exist in their mind, that's what I think. They are real in their mind. And here's the thing as well. People with tulpas even talk about possession. So, like, they can give control of their body to the tulpa. They even call it switching. Literally, they will switch the dominant personality in the body. Like, as if the Jason from before decides to not control the body anymore and leaves his Queen Elizabeth tulpa to control the body. My god, can you imagine the guy from the story creating the faulty Pinkie Pie tulpa, switching with the tulpa, and having the Pinkie Pie tulpa take control of the body, like that screaming mess. Maybe she doesn't even scream when she takes control of the body, I don't know. What if you want to get back control of your body, but the tulpa doesn't relinquish control? I know, maybe I'm exaggerating, maybe it doesn't work like that, maybe you can get a good control of your tulpas, but at the same time, aren't we saying that those are sentient beings? Because we are saying that. They are sentient. What if they just decide to be assholes and not give you back control of your body? That's what I'm talking about. So that's why not only the concept of tulpa scares me, but I also think they could be real. And here's another thing. I believe there's much more to discover about the brain, the mind, that we haven't discovered yet. Sure, okay, at the end of the day, I know that technically it's all neurons transmitting electricity between each other and forming connections and stuff. Okay, sure, I know it's all that. But how do you explain being sentient? How do you explain, being yourself, your mind, your personality? How do you explain all of this? Okay, yeah, I know at the basis, and I know like the constructing, like the building blocks, I understand the building blocks, the bricks that form it. Same way I understand a car has a steering wheel, it's got suspension, it has wheel. But I don't know how all of these come together to form exactly the car. I don't know how it's all wired. Same way I know the brain is created of various neurons and they make connections, but I don't know exactly the process of making connections. I don't know which connections make you be sentient. I don't know. So, and I'm pretty sure the scientific community in general doesn't know. So there is still definitely much more to learn about the brain. And I think it's at this point a consensus that we don't even use 100% of our brain. We use like 5 or 10% or whatever. Maybe more, maybe less, I don't know. But we don't use all of our brain. So, is it really that hard to believe that if you do the right exercises, if you learn how to meditate and stuff, you can use your brain to create new people inside your head? Because to me it's not hard at all. I totally believe it, this is a possibility. And that's also why I'm gonna stay away from all of this. It's not dark magic or whatever, no, at the end of the day it's mostly psychology, I guess. But it feels like it's an area of psychology that is a little less understood. And like I said before, I'm not gonna risk creating a messed up tulpa that screams in my ears. And I'm not gonna risk fracturing my psyche like that. And I guess I just wanna keep full control of my body. And if you think otherwise, I'm not gonna like attack you or anything, because I'm not about that in this channel, in this podcast. I'm not like that. I try to be respectful and stuff, especially because I've seen members of the Tulpas community that are happy as well. They're happy with their Tulpas, and again, at the end of the day, they made them themselves, so of course they'd be happy. They made them the way they wanted, most likely, or at the very least they shaped them to be not assholes. But I will still not recommend doing this. And sorry if any of you with tulpas listen to this. This is not a personal attack or anything. I guess I just wanted to explain this this type of phenomenon, this type of concept. And in any case, I hope I got the explanation right. You know, I hope I got it. I didn't mess up too much or whatever. I'm not an expert again. But I hope you liked this episode of the TrueCast. I hope you found it interesting, because to me this whole research was very interesting as well. I stepped into a world I didn't know about, and to some degree I will say that, yeah, okay, sure, I did say that I'm still scared and stuff, but I'm a lot less scared about it. Now I don't think that just because I read some creepy story I'm gonna suddenly have this thing living in my mind. I do think the power of the brain the power of the mind of, you know, creating suggestions and imagining things especially when you're panicked, is very great. It's very great power. The mind can do crazy stuff. When you think something, when you're scared something is gonna happen, you might imagine it happening so much, you might even see it. Who knows? I think, you know, if you think, oh, it would be scary right now if I was all alone in my room in the dark and suddenly I hear a voice, that would be very scary. And then you hear the voice because you scared yourself into hearing that. It happened to me. I think the mind can be very powerful. And that's what scares me still. But like I said, I'm not as scared anymore. For the final time, I hope you enjoyed the episode. I hope you found it interesting. And I hope it was respectful as well. I hope I didn't offend anyone. And if I did, I am really sorry. It was never my intention. That's all for today. I'll see you in the next episode.